I'm getting ready to buy a company that makes about $250,000, $270,000, $80,000 a year.
All right.
Your new tax plan is going to tax me more, isn't it?
Well, here's what's going to happen. If you're a small business, which you would qualify, first of all, you get a 50% tax credit, so you get a cut on taxes for your health care costs. So you would actually get a tax cut on that front. If your revenue is above 250, then from the 250 down, your taxes are going to stay the same. It is true that for, say, 250 up, from 250 to 300 or so.
Well, here's my question.
I just want to answer your question. So for that additional amount, you go from 36 to 39%, which is what it was under Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
So the reason we're doing that is because 95% of small businesses make less than 250. And so what I want to do is give them a tax cut. I want to give all these folks who are bus drivers, teachers, auto workers who make less, I want to give them a tax cut. And so what we're doing is we are saying that for folks who make more than 250, that marginal amount above 250, they're going to be taxed at a 39 instead of a 36% rate. There are two ways of looking at it. I mean, one way of looking at it is now that you've become more successful through hard work, you don't want to be taxed as much.
Exactly.
Which I understand. But another way of looking at it is 95% of folks who are making less than 250, they may be working hard too, but they're being taxed at a higher rate than they would be under mine. So what I'm doing is, put yourself back 10 years ago when you were only making whatever, 60 or 70. Under my tax plan, you would be keeping more of your paycheck. You'd be having lower taxes, which means that you would have saved and gotten to the point where you are faster. My attitude is that if the economy is good for folks from the bottom up, it's going to be good for everybody. If you've got a plumbing business, you're going to be better off if you've got a whole bunch of customers who can afford to hire you. And right now, everybody's so pinched that business is bad for everybody. And I think when you spread the wealth around, it's good for everybody.
Spread the wealth around. That's what he told this guy, Joe, who turned out to be a plumber that day. And Joe the plumber was born back in 2008 when then Senator Obama was running for the presidency of the United States, and we know what happened since then. But what happened to Joe the plumber? Well, he's been around for a while, and he's been taking his message around the country since then. He's become an activist. He's run for Congress. He's involved in a lot of different things, and he's also a friend. And Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher joins us this morning. He's in Harrisburg this week at a gun show, and he's with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Hey, my friend, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, brother. Hanging out here at the farm complex in Harrisburg, meeting people, talking guns, talking hunting. I mean, that's the fun stuff to talk about.
Yep, absolutely. What do you think about as you were kind of listening to that exchange out, I guess, on your front lawn back in 2008?
I haven't heard that in some time now, and so when you were playing that, I'm sitting there listening to him give me his answers, and then, obviously going through the recent history of what he's done and not done, and it surprised me that he got voted in a second time. That's what I was sitting there thinking. I was like, I can't believe he actually got voted in a second time. But that's the power of the media. That's the power of uninformed, low information voters. And so it's just it's frustrating is what I felt when I was listening to that exchange again.
What came out of that was the share the wealth idea that the country started debating and has been debating ever since. The redistribution from the wealthy should always pay a little bit more on every program that comes down, and the other part should gain from that. The idea that the haves and the have-nots are really what we look at as far as America, and for a lot of us, it's made us uncomfortable because we look at America as American and what is best for all Americans, not the haves and the have-nots or any other kind of ist that we seem to add out there. Fair statement?
Well, absolutely. I mean, right there when you were listening to that exchange, he was perpetuating class warfare, turning people against each other. But in reality, what his tax plans do is, I'm telling you right now, the rich aren't going to pay more, and they're never going to pay more than what the politicians are going to keep carving loopholes out for them. What happens is the rich are going to stay rich, and they're going to keep paying the little bit they pay. The poor are going to stay poor as far as right now and how the economy's sitting and the politicians at the helm, because, the poor staying poor gives the Democrats power. The people that constantly pay, are your blue-collar workers, your middle class. Those are the people that are paying for Obamacare. Those are the people that are paying for every new tax that comes down the pike, because the rich, they just charge more for their product. That those taxes get passed down to the middle class, the ones that actually buy things, the ones that pay for all the different entitlements that the government put out there. It's the middle class getting squeezed, and no Republican or Democrat is actually representing the middle class.
No, you're absolutely right. And the one point that you made in that conversation as I was listening with then Senator Obama, when you said, I worked hard. I went from wherever I was before to working hard to make my plumbing business go. So I don't think, a lot of people say, well, what if when you were $60,000 or $70,000, you wanted to keep more of your money? Well, yeah. So what I would say is, get a new tax system. If I'm having more of my money taken at that point in time, find a fair tax system or find a way that I can do that. But you don't do it at the expense of somebody else who might be working just as hard as you were when you got to that point where you were making more than 125 or 150, whatever it might be. I mean, the idea that we're somehow going to steal from one group to give to another group doesn't make for a very good country, I don't believe.
Well, no, you're punishing success, which is contradictory to everything we've grown up as Americans from the day we were, born and taught in school and taught by our parents. If you work hard, you can succeed in this country because, this is a great country. We have laws that everybody's supposed to follow. Well, anymore, politicians are above the law, and we see that every day, and no one is holding them accountable for their actions, and they do. They break the laws every day, but since they're politicians, they're congressmen, they're senators, they're president, they feel above the law. And when no one, when you have people that are above the law, our system breaks down, and that's what's happening, brother.
You are welcome to join us this hour and ask Joe any questions you'd like. He's not shy about giving you an answer. 1-800-357-0910. Questions for Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. I want to ask you a question. You became a celebrity. For all intents and purposes after that, whether you like that term or not. A working celebrity, I suspect. But one of the things you got to do, and you and I talked to each other over the years, you got to go around the country. You were asked to speak at a lot of different places, a lot of different functions, which is where I met you up in Harrisburg one time. And so I want to ask you this question. As you get around the country, and you're back down here in Harrisburg today, is America's heart still beating strong? And how can we change the status quo of what's going on in Washington, D.C. and seeming to invade our lives right now?
Well, yeah, you're right. I still do go around the country quite a bit. And, there's people I meet every day that love this country, more than life itself. Our military veterans and just regular folks that haven't served in the military that, support us. But, the love of America is still out there, still strong. But it's definitely a lot of frustration on their part because they feel, what does my vote matter anymore? And, they can sit there and give you a lot of examples as to why their vote doesn't matter. And when they feel that way, they feel defeated. They don't feel they have any recourse as far as how do we get this country turned back around and get it heading in the direction it's supposed to be. And, my answer is states' rights. Forget, people are going to disagree with me, but forget voting for Congress and Senate. I mean, I still want you to vote, don't get me wrong. But, get a strong state governor. Make your representative, your state representatives work for you. Article 5 convention, a lot of people are talking about that, and I think there's something to that. There's a lot of great websites out there. In fact, at last count, I think there's 27 states that have signed up for the Article 5 convention, and one of the main pushes is a balanced budget amendment. But states' rights, if we're going to turn this country back around, it's going to start at the state level because anymore, Washington, D.C. believes it's the United States of Washington, D.C., not the United States of America. And we got to get that mindset turned around and get it back to the people that serve this country as opposed to us serving Washington.
When you stood there that day and you looked eye to eye to what the person was going to become the next president of the United States, did you see anything at that point? Was there anything that you saw that you said, if this guy gets elected, finish the sentence, okay? Was there anything you saw out there?
Well, just his answer, and he believed in his answer. He wholeheartedly believed what he was talking about, and in the last, 6 years, almost 7 years now, has proven that he believes in what he's talking about. But what he believes is so anti-American, it's not even funny. It's not what this country was built on. It's not the principles it was built on. And so his answer scared me. Because when he was sitting there answering, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, I earned the money the first time, but it wasn't good enough. Now he wants to take it away from me, give it to a bunch of people that may or may not be working hard, and then he wants me to go to work for them again and earn it a second time. Earning it the first time wasn't good enough. And so, no, his answer scared me to my bones, and I thought, There's no way somebody like this with these kind of ideals that are so un-American is going to get elected. I mean, I was stunned when it happened.
If you have a question for Joe Wurzelbacher, give us a call, 1-800-357-0910 on anything. He's had a chance to kind of tour the country, talk to a lot of people, get a little bit of the idea what the pulse is in this country. Let's get Tom in York. Tom, you're up with Joe Wurzelbacher. Go ahead, Tom. Your turn to make the call.
I'd like to make a question and a comment to Joe. First of all, I would like for you, and I'm going to ask other people this question, your feelings toward people who don't work, especially if they're healthy, able-bodied, getting tax refund checks / tax rebate checks. And in that answer, I would like you to elaborate on what you do as a plumber from the time you get up in the morning at what time to the time at night you might, unless you're on call 24 hours. And furthermore, if you get to meet any significant politicians, especially in D.C., tell them we did not vote them to get along with Obama. If we want him to be opposed on the increase of taxes, the increase of government spending, the tearing apart our American military, and the dumbing down of our kids for the education system, which they say doesn't have enough funding.
Okay,
that's
Tom, we got you. Thank you so much. I think he gave you a term paper right there, Joe, but go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you what, the governor of Maine just put the bill together, and I don't know if it passed yet or not, but it's supposed to be coming here soon. But he's proposing that every able-bodied person that's on welfare, single able-bodied person, actually has to work 20 hours a week in order to receive their welfare check. And a lot of people are getting behind that bill there in Maine. And so that's a start because, when some programs work in states, the federal government sometimes will take a look at that and say, well, maybe we can implement that nationwide. I know a lot of people are for welfare recipients, and I'm not talking about people down on their luck for a short time. I'm talking about these people who are first, second, third generation welfare people that have no intentions on ever getting off welfare. Those people are taking to the system and tearing it down and using it and then getting over on you and me, the taxpayer. So I think, we need to look in that. The programs we have on the books, we don't need new laws. We need to enforce the laws that are currently there. And I think we can take a hard look at some of these people that are getting over on the system, and it's something that needs to be done. As far as meeting politicians, I've met your congressmen and your senators, and that's why I say we need to go to the state level, because quite honestly, the Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C. aren't working for you. They're working for themselves, and they're working for the lobbyists.
Yeah, you feel like they're kind of guarding a power structure a little bit a lot of times, and that's what I say about the status quo, that, when you're guarding the fort, you don't have time to stand up for the people because you're on the defensive, not on the offensive.
Well, exactly. I mean, when you got people like John Boehner sitting there thinking he's actually doing a good job, there's something wrong there.
Right. Hey, we're going to come back. I want to ask, you ran for Congress. I think was it Marcy Kaptur you ran against? And,
Yep.
And I want to ask you what you learned from that. That's one of the many things. And I want to find out the other things you've been doing since, the time that Senator Obama and you got together on your front lawn. We're going to talk more with Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher when we come right back here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. It's an hour with Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher, who became pretty much a household name. He became all of us as regular Americans. I just got a tweet a moment ago, Joe, from Joel, and he said, we didn't learn anything from Obama's answer to Joe the Plumber. 1,000 words to say everything and nothing. So one person's look at it one person's ear to it as they heard that this morning. You ran for Congress later on. I mean, you've been making a difference and going around the country. And by the way, you can feel welcome to call in and ask Joe a question or give a comment, 1-800-357-0910. But Joe, you decided to run for Congress against Marcy Kaptur. It was unsuccessful, and yet probably successful in a lot of other ways. What did you learn when you went out and you ran for Congress and you got involved in this whole thing?
Well, to be honest with you, I kind of became a little bit more disgruntled with, I hate saying it like this, but the American people in general. When I was running around speaking at different events, I give my opinion, and people liked it. They're like, man, you should run for Congress. You should run for president. You should run for, dog catcher. You should run for anything and everything because you have my vote. And so I said, okay, and I'm hearing this from everybody, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll give it a shot because I'd love to get to Washington, D.C. and give them people a piece of my mind. So I enter the race and start raising money, and one of the first things I found out is everybody and your party and the people who are voting for you expect you to kiss their butt.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not one to kiss butt. I put my opinion out there, and if you like it, then go for it. You don't have to like me. You have to like the end result. And that's what I always talked about is getting things done. But if you don't out there shaking hands and kissing babies and pretending you're the best friend of everybody out there, they get disgruntled with you, and then all of a sudden all your support ups and vanishes. And it surprised me that they'd be so, I don't know, weak-willed, if you will. And not to mention that everybody and their brother. Now, Marcy Kaptur's been there for 32 years. I mean, she was definitely cemented in that district. And then when they did the redistricting, and they talked about that a lot in Ohio, they gerrymandered the hell out of those districts. They made sure that district was going to be won by a Democrat for the next 100 years if they never changed it again.
Right.
They really set her up, and she's been in place. She's got all the favors owed to her. She's got, and I'm not trying to make excuses to why I lost. It's just these are facts out there. That's why it's so hard to unseat a sitting Congress.
And that's one of the wrong things that's done all over the country in every state. I mean, here in the state of Pennsylvania right now, it's Republican, and they basically went out and districted as for Republican. So it's one of those things that, you're up against it if you're running in certain districts, depending upon what party you are.
Exactly. And not to mention, I debated her on TV, and, I cleaned her clock. I mean, she had no facts. She had a lot of opinions and a lot of feelings, but the facts just are not on her side. Now, did that get publicized? No. They showed it on TV, but the next day it wasn't even in any of the papers. The Cleveland Plain Dealer, the Toledo Blade, none of the major papers even carried it or watched it. Now, if she would have cleaned my clock, you'd bet it had been first page, front page news. Joe the Plumber got his butt kicked by Marcy Kaptur, but because I was the guy challenging and she was their favorite. I didn't get any of the local coverage that, I could get national coverage, but that doesn't help you because people in my state, my district needed to vote for me, but they weren't getting the information because, the news, clearly had their favorites. And that's just the way it works sometimes.
I want to come back and talk to you a little bit on the other side of the bottom of the hour about plain talk versus politically correct talk. But we have a caller on the line. We got Ed in Harrisburg. Ed, you're on the Gary Sutton Show for Joe the Plumber. Go ahead, Ed. Your turn to make the call.
Hi, I'd like Joe's opinion on the fact that Obamacare and the government are dictating what doctors can charge, and they take 8 to 10 years to go through college, and there's going to be higher taxes on the more higher income earners, and so less people will go to college, and there'll be a shortage of doctors. There already is, and supply and demand, they're going to want more money, but they won't get it. So what's Joe's opinion on that, please?
All right, Ed. Thank you so much, Joe.
Well, that was one of the arguments that was being made, the fact that when you have socialized medicine, and that's what Obamacare is, you're going to get worse service. And you can look at a lot of different places, from Canada to England, and a lot of people want to say and how great it is because you can be seen. Oh yeah, but if you got something serious that needs to be done, you come to America to get it done because we've been on the cutting edge of technology in the medical field for a very long time, and everybody comes here to get educated and to become doctors, and they might go back to their countries, but they come here to America. And you're right, when people see that they can't make as much money, not everybody goes into the medicine field because they want to help people; they want to make money. And when they find out they can't make money, they'll become lawyers or politicians and get it another way. So that being said, that's why we got to get rid of Obamacare. It can be done. Congress holds the power of the purse. Why John Boehner and the Republicans that are currently serving aren't exercising their power on behalf of their constituents is beyond me.
When we come back, Joe, I want to ask you two questions, and we're going to take more of your calls, by the way. 1-800-357-0910 for Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. Yes, that's Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. What's right with America and what's wrong with America from your travels and what you've seen? And also, plain talk or politically correct talk? I was thinking about it as you were saying how you were out there, and people said, yeah, you're saying it, brother, go run. But when it comes time to vote, do we kind of revert back to the safe, politically correct talk and politically correct choices? We're going to ask Joe the Plumber that question when we come back after a very quick break here on the Gary Sutton Show. It's 11:30. By the way, if you go to joeforamerica.com, you can check out Joe Wurzelbacher's website, Joe the Plumber. And one of the things he has underneath is something I talk about all the time. He says it's not about right and left, it's about right and wrong. And Joe, I think that's what drew a lot of people to you. It wasn't about, you represented what a lot of us think in America, the regular guy and the regular gal, and saying, it's not about right and left all the time. It is about right and wrong. Right and left belongs to the politicians. Some of us have kind of bought into it and gotten yanked into it, but most of us, I think more in terms of right and wrong in terms of our daily decisions, don't we?
Well, absolutely. It's amazing how neighbors will hate each other because one finds out he's a Democrat and the other one's a Republican. And that's what the media and the politicians love. The more they divide us, the more they're able to control us. I get that on a regular basis. People sit there and think I'm some kind of GOP mouthpiece, which is laughable because GOP definitely hates me with a passion. And I'm okay with that. What most people find out when they meet me, and I'm not sitting here going to blow a bunch of smoke up my skirt and say I'm the greatest guy in the world, but we have a lot in common, more so than the media will have us believe or the politicians would have us believe. We want to raise our family. We want our kids to have an opportunity that we've had. We don't want to pay as many taxes because we take that money and make better use for it with our community. There are so many things that we have in common that if we can get beyond politics and just look at each other, then it would strengthen the community. And that's why, they keep dividing us, because they don't want us to be strong as community, because then we wouldn't be as easily controlled as we are right now.
Joe, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll come right back to you. We have a quick update on some traffic out here on Route 30, and Bill Saunders is in the WSBA newsroom. Bill?
Thank you, Gary. We have an accident on Columbia Borough in Lancaster County. This is on eastbound Route 30 at the Ironville Bridge. It's got traffic backed up to the Susquehanna River Bridge, so you'll want to avoid the area for the time being. Route 462 would be your alternate, but you can expect delays there from traffic overflow from Route 30. Again, an accident in Columbia Borough, Lancaster County on eastbound Route 30 at the Ironville Pike. We'll have an update on this at the top of the hour on WSBA. I'm Bill Saunders.
Thank you, Bill. And we're back with Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher this morning. Joe, I was interested in an article this morning I was reading by Cheryl Atkinson before I get to some of the other questions I said I'd have for you. And by the way, if you have questions out there, a comment for Joe the Plumber, 1-800-357-0910. Cheryl Atkinson, who used to work for CBS, asked a really profound question this morning. She said, she was talking about the Brian Williams thing that's going on right now, where Brian Williams said he was in a helicopter that was, hit with, I guess, a bomb or something, and it turns out that was RPG. It turns out that was not the case. In fact, he was an hour behind the group that got hit. But she asked this question. Hillary Clinton also said the same thing back in 2008. Williams goes all the way back to 2003. And she said they were fired at on a runway, and they're getting off a plane in Bosnia. Well, there's pictures of her getting off the plane, signing autographs for 7th grade kids and kind of lingering there. And it doesn't look like there's anybody attacking at all. So the question that Atkinson asked this morning was, why did Hillary survive a Brian Williams-like tale? Why should we, feel any different about her than we feel about Brian Williams? So I'll throw the question to you, again, under the umbrella of right and wrong, not right and left.
Well, it's all about the spin. We've been talking about that now for 10 years. The media is able to make the spin. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have become experts on spinning things. And right now, Brian Williams is getting both barrels. It's because it's been a constant. CNN has been falsifying information. NBC's been caught, 4 or 5 times in just as many years falsifying information to push their agenda further. To get ratings. Everybody's after Fox because Fox has the better ratings, and they have to figure out how to, get back on top. And, when you get fired upon, that makes you more interesting. Oh, this guy's really been in it. He's looked down the barrel of a 44 and walked away and survived. Wow, I got to listen to this guy. It's all about an image. And, they've sold that. They pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to tell Brian Williams what kind of suit to wear, how to wear his hair, and how to speak, so more people will sit there and watch him. The Fox does the same things. These people, right, they spend tons of money to make sure you listen to them. But that's why Brian's getting both barrels, because it's been happening too much, and they've been getting caught too often.
And the other thing, too, is, we have a tough time trusting a lot of our institutions in the country right now. So when you look at the news, we've always said, well, that's the fourth estate. They're the watchdogs on society. They're supposed to be taking care of. Well, that horse left the building a long time ago. But we still have this, I want to say, mirage, this idea that somehow these are the most trusted voices in America. Brian Williams, and then he comes on and pontificates on the news for the evening. So I wonder to myself, okay, why do we why do we expect him to be on a level where he's supposed to be honest, and yet Hillary Clinton, we just say, oh, okay, they're politicians, they lie anyway, so, we expect them to lie. But isn't it kind of like just looking for pie in the sky here? It really doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it's become acceptable. That's the problem. It's become a norm in society. It's when I talk about right and wrong, people want to sit there and, well, where do you base your right off of? Well, quite frankly, I base my right off the Bible. I'm a Christian, and right and wrong's pretty stark. It's black and white. But everybody wants to live in a gray. That whole do what feels good is a bunch of BS. Most people have to do what they got to do to make a living to support their families. Do what feels good. You do that when you're 9 and 10 years old. You don't do that when you're 19 and 20. And that mentality has just gotten to America so entrenched in America now that we're graduating kids that can barely read or write and just do what feels good. I'm so sick and tired of that. Life is not fair, and you have to work hard. Sometimes you got to take a bunch of crap in order to get anything done. This whole do what feels good is just, it's tearing America apart. It's making a bunch of, they talk about the pussification of America, and we're living in it right now.
We're talking with Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher this morning, who speaks plain talk, in case you didn't figure that one out yet. Mike in York, you're next up. We have 3 lines open, 1-800-357-0910. Mike, you're on the Gary Sutton Show with Joe the Plumber. Go ahead, Mike.
Good morning, Gary. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mike.
Howdy.
Hey, I'll tell you, Gary, the reason, it's funny the stuff we learn from movies, and especially movies that you wouldn't think of as being very, intellectual. But the movie I'm thinking of is Blazing Saddles.
You're right. Not necessarily intellectual and definitely politically incorrect.
But the reason Hillary survives is because of a thing that I think Harvey Korman says it. He says, we got to protect our phony baloney jobs.
Yep.
And you have to think back to when Dan Rather got fired. Now, even though Dan Rather was a big shot, he did have a boss. And Dan Rather took a limo to work every day, and Dan Rather's boss took a limo to work every day. And at some point, the light bulb went off in the boss's head that said, this is a problem with Dan Rather, and if I don't do something, I'm going to lose my limo ride to work every day. And that's Dan Rather guy. He realized he better do something. It's either him or Dan Rather, and he decided to fire Dan Rather. And that guy still had his limo ride. So Hillary survived because there's nobody that's that's going to lose their limo ride if she survives. Brian Williams' situation is different. His boss is going to lose her limo ride, I think, either way, because they've lost so many ratings in the morning and then Meet the Press. If they fire Brian Williams, she's going to get fired. If they keep Brian Williams, she's going to get fired. I think he stays because I don't think she's got the nerve to pull the trigger to fire him.
Well, we'll get a thought on that. But well said, Mike. Really appreciate the call, Joe. It is interesting. Like if you're in a boat for one, and you've got the gun, and 2 people are trying to get in, guess who wins? So your thoughts on that whole thing?
Well, first he said a Blazing Saddles deal. We got to have a couple harumps.
Yeah.
As far as Brian Williams, I really don't have an opinion on that, just because so many talking heads, sit there and have their own agenda and they lie, and he just got caught. Do they get rid of their number one newscaster? That's really what they got to look at. Are they going to lose enough money to where they need to get rid of them, or will they lose too much if they do get rid of them? They're catch-22 here. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I couldn't tell you which way.
Well, and I don't think it takes a brain surgeon to figure out right now that he's taking a few days off to see what happens with the advertising, to see if it'll quiet down. He can somehow kind of slide back in there eventually. But every time he opens his mouth to try to explain it gets worse. So the biggest thing is maybe just go away, shut up for a little bit. And the other day he said, well, he thought they were in a big convoy, and that's what his thought was. And people are bending over forward and backward trying to believe him, but it's tough. It's really tough.
My problem with him is he belittles the people that it does happen to. He's trying to take credit. This happens to airmen. It happens to Army. It happens to guys on a regular basis, and it's a harrowing experience. I was in Israel and running from rockets myself in the Gaza Strip, and there's film backing that up. Literally me running into bunkers because damn Hamas is throwing missiles, rockets over the wall there. And I tell you what, it's scary, and it's something you remember the rest of your life. For people to sit there, and put on a uniform that never served and go around and get free meals at Applebee's, they're belittling the men and women who have made those sacrifices. And that's why I'm angry at Brian Williams, because he's trying to take credit for something that, men and women do every day, and so a lot of them die doing it. And that's my problem. I wish people would make more of a point like that.
Well, you talked about the gray of America, and there's one of the gray areas now when you get people coming back who are supposedly trusted voices in this country, and he says, "Oh, I misremembered the incident." I mean, you just cited it. You just cited you're running around and someone's shooting rockets at your butt. I don't think you misremember that, do you? I mean, either you remember or you forget. But misremember? When do we get that in the lexicon?
Well, you know what? You had a question at the beginning of this deal: is what's wrong with America and what's right with America?
Right.
We'll go further with this. What's wrong with America is Kim Kardashian. Okay. And what I mean by that, this is not her personally, although I really can't stand her. The other day, I guess she laid naked down on a bed, and all I saw was an ass.
Yeah.
I didn't see a good-looking woman. I looked at somebody that is helping destroy society. All these selfies, people are just into themselves. That's what's wrong with America. There's just too much minutia going on out there, and the real important issues can't get solved.
Yep. Let's get Joe in Denver. We'll come back and get some of the right things in America, too. Joe, you're on the Gary Sutton Show with Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. Go ahead, Joe. Your turn to make the call.
Hey, Joe. Gary, great show.
Thank you.
I was thinking when I was talking with some friends over the weekend, and they were saying, well, what do we do? How do we fix the Republican Party? I don't think it's fixable. I think that either a third party or maybe the goal is some type of a separation. Maybe people need to see if they can't move to particular states and try to influence change within them states and as a collective, and then try to straighten things out, as a group, because individually we're all scattered out, and between the rhinos and the liberals, they're on one side, we're on the other, and there's too few of us scattered out through the country to fix what's wrong with this country. And unless we band together and take a stand somewhere, to lose.
No, and I agree with you, brother. That's why I keep talking about states' rights. Wherever I go, I talk about states' rights. Because, I mean, if you call John McCain's office, you're not going to get a hold of John. You're not going to be able to talk to him. The same thing with Lindsey Graham. You're not going to be able to talk to any of these guys,
right,
because they're too busy doing their own thing that's going to serve them. But you can get a hold of your state representative. You can walk down to the state capitol. You can walk to his front door and say, why the hell did you vote for this? This is not going to help our community. This is going to hurt us. What favors are you doing for who, and why are you getting over on us? You can hold those people accountable, but you're not going to be able to hold your politicians that go to Washington and essentially live there and dictate from high above. You need to hold your local representatives accountable. Get some strong governors. Scott Walker is an obvious one. He went toe-to-toe with the SEIU thugs, and he's won, and he's turned Wisconsin back around. You need governors like that who are going to stand up for you, not for their party.
When you were talking a little while ago, and I want to get back to what's right with America, too, but you've always been a plain talker. I mean, a lot of us are. And I think that's one of the things, again, that draws us when someone is able to stand up and talk plainly to the president. You don't get any of this political jargon. But, you also experience people saying, yeah, run. And then all of a sudden they get comfortable with the politicians who are in there. They get comfortable with the politically correct talk. They find themselves saying, oh, I didn't mean gore this ox. You said something about my ox. What are we talking about there? And so they wander back into this land of political correctness, and plain talk kind of gets lost in the final minutes when you cast that ballot. Is that something you experienced?
Oh, absolutely, and it's something that is perpetuated by the media and just in the world at large. I mean, one of the things that makes me an oddity is the fact that I do speak plainly, that I don't hold punches, I say what I want, how I want, and I can back it up. But unfortunately, so many people are so wrapped up in the minutia, like I was talking about Kim Kardashian's and society and do what feels good, that they don't take the time to learn really what's going on. I mean, the Second Amendment's a huge issue out there to a lot of people. It's close to my heart. And it's amazing how many people, still think that we're allowed to have machine guns. Oh, you got to get rid of machine guns. We haven't been, civilians haven't been able to have machine guns in a long time, but they don't know that. So they think, well, you shouldn't have one. Well, I don't have one. It's just people won't take the time to really get to know the facts of what's going on. If they did, they would be floored, and I think you'd have more people out there. And that's why we need people like you out there, Gary, and me, and hundreds of thousands more of us talking about what they can do. Instead of being scared about political correctness and being bombarded by the media, you got to stand firm on your principles and what you believe and put it out there, brother.
Joe, I just got a tweet. It says, please ask Joe about minimum wage. Governor Wolf, our governor today, said it will make the free market work better. What are your thoughts about that?
That's ridiculous. My wife's family has a small business in Wisconsin, and it's Ben Franklin, like a True Value Hardware.
Right.
When they pushed up minimum wage last time, they had to let 4 employees go, and they had to work 2 times as hard because they couldn't afford it. Minimum wage is there for children. It's not there for your adults that are 40 and 50 years old or 30 years old. You're supposed to find yourself a career and move forward. Raising the minimum wage is just going to keep poor people poor, and it's going to hurt the economy because they'll raise the price of bread, they'll raise the price of milk, so you're giving somebody more money, $15 an hour. Now you're paying $6 for a gallon of milk. How has that helped the economy?
Maybe one of the things we can do is also raise the maximum wage then if we're going to do it that way, right? And say, oh, yeah, okay, we're going to pay you $5 more an hour for not doing anything different. We just feel like paying you $5 more an hour. So the whole rationale kind of runs counterintuitive to what we had. Joe, we need to take a very quick break. We're going to come right back. Want to have a few final thoughts here from you on what's good with America and what is the government's business and what isn't. All here on the Gary Sutton Show. Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher with us for the hour on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA with Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. We can take a few more calls yet, 1-800-357-0910. But we have a few minutes left. And Joe, before we get to kind of a final thought here on where you're at this week and people can come and actually see you, what's right with America? We talk about what's wrong a lot of times, and I think we can get caught up in that. But there's still a lot of right about this country, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Going around the country, and I go to a lot of small towns. Your cities, I don't think, represent what's right with America as well as your small towns do. The people are out here working their butts off, taking care of their families, coaching sports. There's a lot of love out there, and I don't mean that from a hippie standpoint. I just mean there's a lot of good people out there still, that look on people and say, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Here's a job or here's a couple bucks. There are so many great people that I meet every day across political spectrums. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat when it comes to that. You're an individual, and so I do. I meet some awesome people that don't get wrapped up in the day-to-day politics, that they don't allow it to affect their lives, which can be bad sometimes because they're not as involved. But I tell you what, these people out here in America, small towns, farming villages, they're great people. The people I've met here in Harrisburg, I've been having a lot of fun talking to them. And I try to get off politics quick and talk about really important things like hunting and fishing. But there are a lot of great people. They're just looking for somebody that wants to do right by them. And they're going to find them. It's going to happen. It's just going to take some work. But that's one thing that America's never been afraid of, and that's hard work.
We're going to take one more call, and then I want you to tell people where you're at and what you're doing and final things here, which you haven't had a chance to ask you about this hour. But Howard in Lancaster has a question or comment for you. Howard, you're on the Gary Sutton Show with Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. Good morning, Howard.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. I think I'm proud of you for your stand and so forth. And I'd like to pose, the thing of it is, their news media is talking about 37 states adopting, gay laws or gay marriages. And I think it's more like 37 men, government, federal lawyers or judges that are representing 37 states rather than 37 states wanting it.
We've got a reaction here. Howard, thank you for your call. Joe? Well, that kind of comes to a larger question. I'll let you answer that within a larger question, which is, what is the government's business and what isn't the government's business?
Well, the amazing thing about that is the last poll taken, less than 4% of the people in America present themselves as being the LGBT. But they got a huge voice, and that's called about a political agenda. Again, it divides us as Americans. Now, this doesn't make me popular with a lot of people, but, the federal government's got no business with this. I believe it's a state issue. Myself, personally, I don't want to see men get married or women get married. It's disgusting. A civil union, hey, that's one thing as far as our tax issues go. But marriage is between a man and a woman, end of story, bottom line. And that's why I think states need to rise up take control back and run their states the way they want to within the Constitution, but not letting the federal government dictate what every state does, because, people in Pennsylvania are different from people in Alabama, or different than people in Alaska. You can't do a one-size-fits-all. There's too many of us, and they're way too different people.
Now, a guy asked earlier, he said, are you still doing your plumbing business? And if not, what are you doing now? And that brings us around to one of the things you're doing in Harrisburg this week. Tell us a little bit about, where you are now from where you were, let's say, back in 2008.
Well, I tell you what, once a plumber, always a plumber. Kind of like once a mechanic, always a mechanic.
Okay.
So, yeah, I still install water heaters and run water lines, but I also have 3 other businesses. I run a gun company called Black Swamp Firearms out of Michigan. I run 2 websites. JoeForAmerica.com is one, and that's political. And then I have another one called Survival Nation, where I have retired military guys that were survival instructors writing articles for me, because I love that kind of stuff, and it's fun to talk about that. And then I also work with the Outdoor Channel and some of the outdoor shows. Today I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to be here till Friday with Best of the West, which we do long-distance shooting. I've shot 1,500 yards, and I tell you what, it was a blast. And the guns these guys build and the scopes they build are bar none the best, called Huskamall. We're in booth 248 here at the Farm Show Complex. I'm going to be here all week. If you come in and ask for Joe the Plumber, I'll give you some hats. We're also giving away a $1,300 scope. And I tell you what, guys, the glass on this is just as good, if not better, than Night Force, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm trying to take some of those celebrity stuff going into the outdoor world, because before anybody knew me as Joe the Plumber, I was Joe the guy going out fishing, Joe the guy going out hunting, trapping. Those are the fun things I like doing. And the people that do that, those are the people I love to hang with, because they're real. They're not putting on airs. They're not trying to use you. They just want to know, hey, what's the best thing to hunt with? What scent did you use? You come over and eat some of this food that I cooked, and I tell you what, those kind of people, those are my people, and that's what I like to do. And so we're at Harrisburg. I hope you come by. Again, ask for Joe the Plumber. I'll be there all day until Friday, and I like to see and talk to you.
Well, Joe, it's always a pleasure, having you on the show. We always have a great time, and keep the plain talk going. I think we need to be able to talk turkey in this country right now, as well as shoot a few every now and then. But we need to talk turkey. And there's too much of the political correctness around, which is just dampening truth. And I think one of the things you don't want to do, and you never do, is pour water on the truth.
No, never. One thing I have to leave you with, as far as Barack Obama and what he's put this country through, I find myself having to work 2 or 3 times harder to make what I made 10 years ago. Yeah. And, that's not what the federal government's there for. They're there I don't want to say necessarily make things easier on us, but damn, they're not there to make things harder on us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Joe, it's great having you in. People could stop by and see you this week. Again, that's booth, 248, you said?
Booth 248, Best of the West. And like I said, come on down. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Liberal. Shake your hand, have a talk with you, and we'll have some fun.
Yep, stop in at the Harrisburg Farm Show Arena. Joe, thanks so much. I look forward to next time soon, my friend.
Hey, sounds great, Gary. You take it easy, brother.
Take care. You too. Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher for an hour today on the Gary Sutton Show. A lot of fun talking to him. And as he said, you don't have to agree with everything. You can disagree with things. But, the fact is that's what he believes. And that's what I always say to you. As I don't have to agree. I don't have to disagree. I can disagree. And that's what makes our country go around. If we're trying to kind of figure it out. And if we have reasons for why we believe what we believe. And that's really one of the things I like about guys like Joe the Plumber. And I think what really hit people in 2008 when he asked that question and it came back with the idea of share the wealth was the idea he was every American. He was every kind of regular person in America who maybe had those kind of questions. He was the guy that was asking the question in the classroom when everybody else was afraid to put their hands up, right? That's all that we're asked to do. And out of that, he has become a citizen activist in this country who is still trying to fight for causes that maybe he sees as standing up for America, right?